Hey everybody, PDA Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. Doing the live thing here. We got Nate coming in. We had a little bit of a scheduling and equipment fiasco, so we're working through that. He's going to be here in a moment, and I thought I would just check in. We're new to being live on LinkedIn. We finally earned the right to do that. If you're new to the Break It Down show, now we're approaching 1,100 episodes overall. And we're pretty proud of the work. We've had a lot of really incredible people. We've had Pulitzer Prize winners, gold medalists, Hall of Fame members from, I don't know, the UFC. I've had Tito Ortiz on the show. Frank Shamrock's been on the show. Songwriting Hall of Fame people like Allie Willis has been on the show. People have won multiple Grammys in the same night, not just multiple Grammy winners. We've had 2 of the 3 members of the Police, musicians. We've had Dan Crenshaw and from Congress and all kinds of people on the show. #1 New York Times best-selling authors like Jim D. Felice and Scott McEwen have been on the show. Jack Carr has been on the show, former Navy SEAL turned adventure novelist. Andrews and Wilson, if you're on the adventure novel thing, you'll know those guys. We've had Tony Toast, who is the executive producer from, a lot of things, but he did that show about the sheriff in Absaroka County. If you guys know that show, it's called Longmire. Had him on, and Hilliard Guess is another Hollywood writer who's on, who's also a friend. Pete Koch, the Swede, is not only a friend who's been on the show, but he's also he's like produced episodes with me. We have people all the time. He brought Frank Stallone to the show. I could go on and on and on. We've had really, really, really incredible people on the show. And I hope you guys go back to the back catalog and take a look at some of the stuff we've had. Lorenzo Lamas has been on the show because of Pete, because they're connected in their acting work. So acting, writing, education, like academics of all stripes. Sometimes we have controversial stuff on where we try to take on challenging topics and try to find our way through. We're going to put up a link to a video with Hanya Bagramovich and Ryan Petty, who are both trying to figure out gun violence and how to reduce it. And they come at it from different angles. And we have a healthy conversation and try to get through that. So sometimes we take on tough stuff. Sometimes we just have a good time. We have comedians. Jay Moore is a really good friend of mine and has been on the show a number of times. We've had a lot of different comedians. Here comes Nathan. Let me see if we can let him get himself situated here. And we'll have Nathan Nelson on here in a second. Let me bring him in. There's my man, Nathan. Hey, Nathan. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Pete.
Yeah, I was just kind of saying hello to LinkedIn. We're new at going live on LinkedIn. Obviously, we have our YouTube presence that anybody can go to. Just type in PDA Turner on YouTube and you'll find a whole bunch of videos. And then the Break It Down show in general, breakitdownshow.com is always good to go to. If you would, Nate, start us off by saying this is Nate Nelson and you're watching the Break It Down show.
This is Nate Nelson and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, Nate comes to us through another former guest. One of the things that we have found, Nate, and you're a veteran, I'm a veteran, you're from the Air Force. We always try to support each other, but sometimes, I come across those of us in our circle, and it's just remarkable the ability to get past whatever life throws at us. And a lot of times, and we'll get into your backstory here in a second. A lot of times, these significant injuries unlock something that the person didn't know that they have, and they become the person they are because of this calamity. And I don't know if that resonates with you, but I guess we'll get to there. Give us a little bit about your background in the Air Force. We're both Intel guys, so that's fun. We can talk some Intel if we want, but let's first learn who you are and how you got to where you're at now.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, fundamentally, I'm just an old country boy from Mississippi. And, after high school, I kind of petered around a little bit, not really having much direction in my life. So that's what kind of led me initially to the Air Force. The education benefits and the travel and the stability and all of those wonderful qualifiers. I expected to be, 4 years and done. But what I found instead was a career that I could be really passionate about, that I was super interested in, and that could really provide not only a degree of diversity and excitement for the rest of my life, but a long path of growth ahead of me. So super excited. So once I figured out what it was I was doing in Intel, I wanted to do that for a career. So.
I've got an airplane flying overhead. I work out of a tent in my backyard, and I'm right by the John Wayne Airport. So I always try to mute when airplanes go overhead. But what kind of intel did you do? Just enlighten us on your particular, because look, people say intel. You and I both know that could be a lot of things.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the intel career field. It's so multifaceted. I love it. I mean, every assignment can be dramatically different, and you get an opportunity where you don't have to be bored and stuck. For me, my career was kind of bifurcated into two separate types of intel. I did great big strategic intel for Air Mobility Command when I first came in. I was an enlisted guy, and I briefed Air Mobility Command leadership. Now, for those that don't know about Air Mobility Command, they're the great big transport aircraft that fly all the big heavy stuff around, big C-17s and C-5s, the KC-135 refueling, the KC-10s, those guys that refuel our jet aircraft. Really fantastic mission. But the great thing is they fly into every country in the world. They drop, they do airdrops in places where they can't land. So it's a really broad strategic mission that I got an opportunity to dive into and brief. The second half of my career, once I went through officer training school, I went into AFSOC, and I was the director of intelligence for a special tactics squadron. Now, these are our battlefield airmen. These are our the creme de la creme that we've got. And, it's both ground focused because they deploy with the Army ODAs, but it's also air focused in the sense that they serve largely as joint terminal air controllers, where they're dropping bombs on enemy forces, sometimes very, very close to their own position in very dangerous situations. So very diverse, like I said, career field, and the experience was just phenomenal.
Let's talk a little bit about JTACs. These are the guys you're talking about. It's a remarkable addition to the modern combat unit. That's not recent or anything, but this is just for folks who don't understand. First off, when we brief missions, there's a stacking vertically of assets that are in the air above us. It could be something as it's in a backpack on the patrol, like we have a Raven. So that's like the first layer. A Raven is a remote control airplane drone. And then you're literally on the patrol and you just throw it and it flies out. And then you have the ability to get a feed and then hear on the radio, like, this is what we see. But all the way up to like satellite imagery, I mean, anything you could think of that would be in between on that stratified stack. And so there could be, gosh, I mean, Nate, there could be 10 different assets, even in Afghanistan, above your head that you have access to, whether it's a Kiowa warrior that can fly in and just do a presence flight, or a fast mover that you call in to do an attack run on an enemy position. There's a lot of stuff there. And what you guys in the JTAC side do, and I'm going to tell you what you do, but you're going to correct me when I'm wrong, is you're on these patrols. I mean, I've been on, over 1,000 patrols, right? And almost every time there's a JTAC there, or there's someone JTACing for us, even if they're not on the patrol, they're there as an asset very locally, even if it's that battalion or whatever. And they're helping to marshal these things, because when that kid's on the ground, and it's usually a young guy, and you're in a firefight, their one focus is to get airbase support on the target. And if you're a lieutenant in a firefight, and you've got people to move around and all kinds of stuff to think about, it's nice to be able to look at that guy and know that he's already contributing to the fight in a way that is helpful. And also to always be thinking about what resource can we use, because it's not always combat related. Sometimes it is just a drone or something else that you can bring in. You're trying to find the right tool, and that JTAC is just a master at that.
Absolutely. So yeah, like you said, you've got the difference between strictly combat aircraft, or you've got what we call ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, and you've got the hybrids. So a lot of times you've got targeting pods on combat aircraft that can be simultaneously used for intelligence collection,
right.
Which is really cool. So our JTACs back home, they spend a whole lot of time trying to master the art of dropping the right precision munition in the right spot to reduce or eliminate collateral damage as much as possible, put the right effect on the right target, and save lives. Not only their own lives, but local civilian lives as well. We don't want to damage infrastructure beyond what we absolutely have to. You're not just going in and indiscriminately dropping the greatest, biggest bombs we have. So there's a lot of understanding that has to go in there. And like you said, in the middle of a firefight, when you're being shot at, those are critical decisions that you need to be 100% on, because at the end of the day, when they do the after action report, when mistakes happen, that's the guy who has to answer for it. So now what I was working on doing was trying to supplement as much as possible. And I am not a JTAC, never was a JTAC, but to help coordinate the ISR portion, just because, like you said, ISR in and of itself, there's dozens and dozens of different capabilities that are matched to dozens of different type of air-based assets, and having an understanding of that and being able to apply the right tool to the right problem is difficult in and of itself. So helping to kind of marry those two, the ISR and the combat stuff, together, to take off that JTACs plate a little bit, was kind of the framework and thinking behind what we were trying to do at that point, that deployment.
I don't want to spend a whole lot more time on this, but I think it is important just because people don't know this a lot. So you think about like what you're doing with the specific intel collection aspect of a drone or whatever the asset's going to be. You've got access to a drone for say 8 hours, right? And it's going to fly a pattern and then it's going to come back down. And I'm saying 8 hours just in general. We're not trying to get specific and classified stuff here, but you are going to be able to say, hey, let's have it fly a loop over this mission that's going to happen 2 hours from now. And then, assign it to different tasks, or you're helping to assign it. So you have this massive organization, and the guy who flies the drones may not even be on the same continent as you, right? Like there's a lot of things to coordinate. And you're right, having someone like you to say, well, yeah, I have these 20 minutes available. Let's get this resource on site. And then as a guy like me who's on the ground, you love it. You love seeing that Kiowa come in and pre-fly a valley, and maybe they're not technically an ISR asset, but they are looking and they're like, yeah, we see those guys that you're worried about, that you hear squawking on the radio. We see them and they're over here, and now everybody's heads are down. And it just, in an area like Afghanistan, it's just so remote and so rugged. If you're a mile off the camp, you're not going to have a lot of help for a while. You're going to have to really slug it out, and to have something like that, and it's not always available, is powerful. And so I always appreciate guys like you who are, we always say like you're flying a desk, but damn, that desk is an important desk to us guys on the ground. It makes a difference. I mean, knowing that there's an A-10 above us in case anything gets nasty is so reassuring, because that A-10 doesn't have to even fire a shot. It just shows up and it's like, fight over. Everybody's leaving, it's like, okay.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah. And it, to even draw the idea out even further, we do intel collection way before the mission.
Right.
So there's assets that we employ, whether they're imagery intelligence, like you were talking about, terrain mapping that happens to really understand where, how do our forces need to get to the X? Can they travel overland, or do they need to be dropped in by rotary wing, or do they need to jump out of the back of a C-17 and halo in? And we do the imagery intelligence, we do the SIGINT, so that we know who it is that we're going after, what their intentions are. All of those things help build the pictures. We create what we call pattern of life. We understand those targets, as best as we possibly can before we go in there. We want to make sure, like I said, we reduce collateral damage. So we want to know, hey, are these bad guys surrounding themselves with women and children as a shield? We've got to change our tactics as a result. So you've got all that lead in beforehand, but then you've got the tactical ISR that happens on the X. Hey, this is mission day. These need to be overhead. They have different dwell times, so some of them have to check on, check off, that kind of thing. And then after the fact, mission's over, we got to go back and look and get battle damage assessment. We got to confirm that we accomplished the mission that we intend to do, and we've got to validate a lot of the reports and stuff. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah, yeah, boy, and they have to work in concert, because when you say battle damage assessment, the BDA, I get real angry about these things, because we fight the war with this, right? I mean, and it's incredible to be able to link these assets. By the way, not just across like Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, Coast Guard, whoever's there, but also, hey, there's the French. We're going to use a French plane for this asset. And you're tasking French Air to come over and do something. I mean, it's incredible to be able to do these things. And when you have a BDA, again, like that's awesome. But we also don't control the affect of that mission. So you drop a round on somewhere, we still need a ground unit to go out and hear the story of what that was. Because we can say we absolutely didn't kill a single person, have video and everything, but ultimately, doesn't matter what we think, it matters what they think, and so we have to have, again, restack that mission, go back out 3 days later and see what the heck happened there, so
Absolutely.
that you have the ability to fight that fight. Too often we stop at that BDA, and you and I both know that's just a snapshot in time, and what happens next is another mission. It's more ISR, it's more of everything.
Yeah, human collection and cultural understanding. There's just a tremendous amount to it.
Yeah. So as a guy that flies a desk for a living, and I'm being purposely kind of a dick to you, but I'm just messing around. We're setting it up. What happens? How does your career end? Let's talk about your assignment, your last one.
Okay. So I told you my background. Yeah, we were a lot more buttoned up and office oriented in Air Mobility Command. But then you get into AFSOC and you work with these combat controllers and TACPs and PJs, and they're just, raring to go all the time. And you want to be right along there with them, or at least I did, certainly. So, I was in there in the gym with them every day, and I had to try to mirror their attitudes and their enthusiasm and get her after it to the same degree so I can have the greatest effect that I could. In that same way, we created, I say we, me and some other like-minded intel officers advocated to create a new position to our combat control leadership, our special tactics leadership, that hey, we want to deploy out to the FOB with the guys and work hand to hand, learn their very specific area of operations, and help walk them through how to maximize using ISR to find, fix, and finish those enemy that they're going after. We want to use all of the tools in our kit to have the greatest effect in the shortest amount of time. So it was a long process. We had to really lay out what effects we think that we wanted. We wanted to talk to the combat controllers and the ODAs out there to say, yeah, I think we could benefit from that skill set coming out here and being co-located with us for a period of time. And then we'll see where it goes. And so we did that. So my last deployment in 2013, I was based out of Bagram, but then I would go out to the individual forward operating bases and live with the team for a week or a week and a half through a mission and really leverage all of my, expertise on that specific mission. Having a better understanding of their area of operations, I was able to be a bit more intimately familiar with the problem sets. It's kind of hard to do over email or phone call if you're not just kind of co-located and talking through with all the members of the team. So
yeah, and really, you're excited just to get out of the office too. I mean, obviously, it makes you better at your job because you get to see and meet these guys, and they get to know each other, and you get to have a real. But goddamn, it's horrible sitting at a desk every day.
And I'm sure that you can imagine that I had a little bit of a selfish desire, looking forward into my intel career in the future, having that as a background and a basis. No other intel officer gets to do that. Nobody. And it's kind of, if you want to be the best, you got to put yourself out there as hard as you can.
All right, so you're out there doing it as hard as you can, establishing your credentials. What happens?
We had a couple of successful missions. I went down south to Kandahar for a little over a week, came back. Everybody was real pleased. I went up to Kunar province, another team, completely different terrain, very mountainous, right on the border of Pakistan. Very exciting. That was successful. And then my third trip was down to Ghazni province. And this particular location was kind of interesting. This base hadn't been attacked in 2 years. When I'm doing my threat assessment for my location where I'm going to be, I didn't have data to actually communicate to my commander. These guys were driving around using human intelligence. They were talking to the locals, and they heard that there were a bunch of technicals and HMGs and maybe a Dishka in the area, and they were driving around just trying to get shot at to figure out where they were. And they weren't getting a lot of ISR help over there in that particular area. So I was trying to go over there and kind of sort that out as much as possible. So I went there late September of 13 and spent a week there. That was my third and final little mini trip within Afghanistan. So I arrived and set up in the exact same way we did before. I learned their area of operations. I got kind of familiarized with the team a good bit, and then requested all the ISR for this particular mission. They went out, they accomplished it, and they came back with great success. The final day that I was there, and like I said, I was only scheduled to be there for 7-8 days. The base was attacked with a single round of indirect fire. First attack in over 2 years. And for those who have deployed to Afghanistan and know the TTPs of enemy forces, this indirect fire was very, very unusual in that it was a 107 that was fired that hit the dead center of the base. It was really spectacular. Normally they're wildly inaccurate. They get set up on rocks, and they kind of light a fuse and run away, and it doesn't come anywhere close. We know it happens, but we don't really feel threatened so much by indirect fire. This was unique. I was in a little transient bee hut in the middle of the base, and I had just woken up that morning, but I was still laying on the cot when the round came right through the wall about 3 feet over my head and exploded. I came to just seconds later because there was debris still falling down and dust everywhere, obviously. And I knew that I was messed up really badly. I couldn't tell how badly, but I knew that both of my lungs were collapsed because I was breathing very shallowly. We get trained to identify the signs and symptoms of those kind of blast injuries. So I went to my IFAC where I knew I had needles, and I was going to do my self-aid right there because that was a sense of urgency that I had never experienced in my life before. Fortunately, other members of the team came running into the fire. They see the explosion, they run into the building, and they saw that I was in a bad position. So they kind of took over and asked me to lay down and let them handle it. The 18 Delta got there and together with another teammate, they did needle chest decompression. Then they ended up doing chest tubes on each side so I could breathe again, which was amazing. And then they rolled me over and saw the shrapnel damage in my back and started applying chest seals to try to stop the bleeding as much as possible. So that was pretty harrowing. I was conscious through the besides those first few seconds through the rest of the event until the medevac got there. Now here's a great story about our combat controllers and what our JTACs do. Our combat controller that I was working with, that I was stationed with back home, not only was calling in medevac for me, but he was simultaneously deploying an air weapons team to the point of origin. They found the guys that fired the rocket and dispatched them real quick. So being able to coordinate both of those effects at the same time just kind of highlights in the stress of that situation.
Yeah.
He knows me. He knows my wife. He knows, my wife is back home 6 months pregnant with my first child. He knows my situation, and being able to separate that out or internalize it a little bit and get the mission done as quick as possible to save my life. I mean, that's heroism right there. It's what that is.
No doubt. No doubt. So what's the BDA on you? Like what kind of shape are you in?
Well, it was rough. I woke up a couple of weeks later at Walter Reed, breathing out of my neck through a trach and unable to move. I learned in the aftermath, because they knocked me out as soon as I got on the medevac, that I was fortunately only 10 minutes away from a special operations surgical team. And they had neurologists and trauma docs and all of the appropriate physicians, surgical team there to save my life as well. So they did the immediate surgery on my spine. I'd broken my T1 and T2 vertebrae. And although my spinal cord wasn't severed, the break in my movement after the fact caused swelling around the spinal cord that kind of choked it off. So, they fused all of those bones together. They took out as much shrapnel as they could. I actually had 5 different surgeries in Afghanistan trying to remove a great deal of shrapnel, trying to close up as much as possible the minor, large gaping shrapnel wounds. Some of the larger ones they had to take different methods to. But I am really blessed to be alive. But for all intents and purposes, I was bleeding so much they had to replace 46 units of blood through me. They actually had to go collect guys to donate live, right there beside me. They ran out of the stored stuff, and it's just amazing when everybody comes together to save somebody's life like that. So I'm really fortunate that I even woke up, but I did. Walter Reed, I looked up, and my wife is, in a dress, has got her hair and makeup done, and she's there with our baby still in her stomach. So needless to say, I was in a pretty rough spot. I'm a C7 quadriplegic now, which I have a little arm movement, but you can see I've got some damage to the function in my hands.
Yeah,
where they don't quite function completely.
But yeah, I mean, a quadriplegic. So you're in a wheelchair, at least for right now, for the rest of your life. Who knows with technology and everything, which is incredible even to think about that being a possibility. But you've got the use of your arms and your hands to a limited extent. And do you serve anymore, or do they medically retire you and send you on your way?
So they sent me down to Tampa. They've got a lot of spinal cord injury centers around the United States. I chose Tampa for no other reason that it's warm there. And we were close to SOCOM headquarters, obviously, so the resources were right there co-located. But yeah, they sent us down there for my rehab. My daughter was born just a few months later. They had literally just taken the trach out of my neck and my cervical collar off. And I'm holding my brand new baby girl, first time father, trying to figure out how am I going to do this life,
Right.
But I spent a little over a year down in Tampa at the VA, and I couldn't take it anymore. I just the idea of that being my whole life, where I'm just going to rehab, and I felt like I had plateaued. I had made a lot of progress, so I moved back up to Hurlburt Field, higher headquarters, and they initiated my medical board for retirement. So I retired late November of 2015.
As a captain, or what rank were you?
Yeah, I was a captain.
And do they ever try to bump you up and be like, you know what, you just got promoted to major, now we're going to medically retire you? That's really what happened. Like they should just automatically like you get promoted.
I think they do that posthumously. So, I'll forego that honor. But it was kind of fortunate. So I was a first lieutenant when I got hit, and during the time I was in rehab, I was scheduled to promote. So that's kind of when it fell into it. So,
and when you been captain, did you throw a kegger like you're supposed to?
Say it again.
Did you buy a bunch of beer for everybody? And when this is for the audience, a lot of times when you get promoted, like it's your responsibility to throw a party and buy a bunch of beer for a bunch of people. Anyhow, okay, so you're a quadriplegic, still a young dude. You got a kid, got a young wife, and now it's like, what's next, right? Medically retired. You have to work still as much as you're able. What this I think is that stuff's background, and it's important. It's obviously cataclysmic to what you thought your life was going to be, but I would submit that your life is significantly better. Like I said earlier on, because of this injury, you've been given an opportunity to do something incredible. So let's start talking about all of the incredible things that you're doing.
Okay. Yeah. Well, exactly like you said, I'd had my life planned out, right, as much as possible. And, got a little wrench thrown in the gears. And I had to figure out there's so much psychological stuff that you got to process when you lose this much capability with your physical body. What can I do? What benefit do I have to my family? What benefit do I have to society? How do I overcome these challenges? How do I overcome the fact that I was capable of doing everything that I imagined I was able to do? Now I feel like sometimes a burden on everybody else because I had to be so reliant on people for very simple things, especially early on. So there was a tremendous amount of struggle to process that. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what pulled me through in a little bit. But retirement at the end of 2015, the very next year, I wouldn't say actively looking for a job, but I was just trying to figure out how to live and how to improve and what that looks like. It was a terrible struggle for my wife and I. Neither one of us were working. She had to quit her career, obviously, to take care of me. And, we're just sitting in the house looking at each other all the time. And, it was difficult for our marriage at that point.
I bet.
And so I got a call from a state representative who I had met previously, who was running for Congress. Matt Gaetz is his name. He's kind of famous nowadays, but he was, unknown except in Florida up until then. And he asked me if I would be willing to serve as his director of military affairs. And I was trying to push him off initially, and I said, I appreciate the opportunity. I said, I'm not going to be good behind a desk pushing papers or whatever. Also, I don't want to be your token busted up veteran that you've got on staff either. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
I don't know how to articulate that, but that's the best way I can do it.
We got those guys. We got a cripple right over there. It's like
exactly.
You don't want to be that guy, and I get it. I get it completely.
Yeah. So, and he said, Nate, that's not it at all. He said, you were an intelligence officer. I've never served in the military. We've got more military and active duty in Northwest Florida than anywhere else in the nation. And I am desperate to surround myself with people who have intimate knowledge of what they need and are good communicators like you are to be able to translate to me what I need to do for them. Because it's an automatic yes. I'm going to give them everything they want. I just need to know. And I need somebody to be my liaison where I'm sitting in D.C. They can go, somebody that's got an inherent credibility, right? So I'd serve with them. We've bled together, we've trained together, all this stuff. Somebody who's got that inherent credibility to get them everything that they need. I was fortunate that was his true intent, and that he valued my insight and my perspective. So I told him, we'll give it a shot and I'll see how I can do. Turned out to be one of the best things for me. I mean, just getting out in the community, putting my face out there, overcoming the simple life challenges that they were trying to rehab me to do at the VA. But until you're actually faced with all these different things you never can really truly learn, and
Right.
learn how to figure it out yourself every single time something's different.
I want to jump in here and say something about this because here's one of the things I've learned in dealing with our brothers and sisters who've been, traumatically injured. I start, my default is to not give you an inch of any kind of sympathy or any kind of anything. I'll say, and I'm positive I asked you, like, what are you capable of? Like, I'm not going to deny you any independence, but I had to learn to do that, So, I mean, look, we all know a bunch of people that don't have a leg, don't have arms, can't hear, can't see, whatever, but they've worked through these paths. And I don't want to treat like, oh, well, Nate, he sure can't walk. And what are we
Yeah,
going to do? It's like, hey, until you tell me otherwise, I'm treating you like you're ready to go, and
and
I think we all need to do that.
that's exactly what we need. You're right. It is a learned thing because, people are inherently, I believe, inherently good, and they want to help. I know that I look like I'm struggling, but I kind of want to struggle a little bit and figure it out. But if I've got 10 people around me jumping to pick me up and handle me, I'm going to get really bothered by that. And I'm going to go down into that place, where I feel like, how everybody kind of looks at me as like a cripple, what I mean?
You're not
and I don't want to feel that, right?
Yeah, you're not helpless. Yeah.
And
You put your hands on you, be like, get your hands off me. I'm doing myself. Even if you can't, you're going to do it.
and the answer has always been every other veteran that I've met that's in any kind of similar situation, they all say, I don't have a problem asking for help when I need it, but until I need it, let me do my thing.
Yeah. So you're working with the representative, and you're working on veteran issues. What are some of the common things that you were able to deal with that that he couldn't know? I mean, like, you're doing this thing, you know what to do, you can communicate, you're part of the community. What's some of the stuff you guys working on and fixed?
Well, really, we had a kind of a fourfold approach to that position. The first and most important was the Department of Defense. It was 60% of our economic driver in the area. I mean, billions of dollars go through all of those bases, and so we wanted to improve the military mission that exists there as much as possible. So because it has a national security impact, we want to get them everything that we can in the National Defense Authorization Act. So I would go meet with senior leadership. They would say, these are our priorities. We would go find the amount of funding that they needed and try to make sure that they got it. The second is the defense industry that supports the Department of Defense, right? So they need to be able to be innovative and respond to the needs of the Department of Defense. So we were trying to ease the obstacles that they may face dealing with the bureaucracy and all of that as much as possible. We wanted to enhance the small business in our area so that we retain in the local area as much of that federal spending as possible. The third was the veterans issues. So veterans' quality of life, working with the Department of Veterans Affairs, understanding ways in which our veterans need additional resources and support, and trying to really understand how we can best serve them. And then the fourth, the congressman does military service academy nominations. So I handled that program for him. That was really the most fun part, and the most kind of rewarding as well.
I want to ask you, because one of the things we do here in America is we sure as heck hate the president, whoever the president is, and we really hate Congress. I mean, approval ratings south of 20%, right? And we all want term limits. Like, we'll vote your guy out. Well, my guy's good, So give us an idea of the man. I mean, it's one thing to say, and all the things you're saying sound wonderful, but like, what's the character of the guy? And you're an officer, you get this, you understand what character is and how we build it and how we lead. But talk to us about Representative Gates.
Yeah, I tried my best to look at his record of what he did in the state house, and tried to kind of be a little bit hesitant to just completely trust what he says he was going to do. But the reality is, from the very beginning, he came out like tenfold stronger and more aggressive than I ever anticipated he would. You know, being as conservative as he said he was, has really been amazing. His character has always been impeccable from my perspective. My interactions with him, I have never seen him, you know, behind closed doors or behind the scenes, act or say things differently than he would say on Fox News or CNN or anything like that.
Right.
His methods, his approach, the things he cares about, exactly the same in front of a camera or what he's telling us to do. He gets really upset and disappointed when veterans feel like, you know, for one reason or another, his office is incapable or slow at fixing their individual issue. You know, constituent services is a huge part of that. So, you know, he wants to know in detail where these cases are. I mean, just in the minute stuff. And he's just ready to pick up a phone if we tell him that's what we need him to do. So genuine character. I was super impressed with him. He's got some unique approaches, but he really jumped on the Trump train pretty early on. I mean, Rolling Stone, I think, called him the Trumpiest congressman in Congress, and that still holds true. That's and he's unapologetic about it as well, which I was always really impressed how he faced the onslaught of criticism, you know, without hesitation, and he laid out a very measured reasoning behind what he does and what he believes. So I've always been impressed with him. I'm still a big fan of Matt Gaetz.
That's awesome. And this isn't, I guess I should say this out loud because it's on video. This isn't like a commercial for Representative Gaetz.
Yeah.
You know, your expression of the character of the man. And we don't all have to agree with him. He's got to get elected in his own district. And so we're just talking about the character of who he is. And I appreciate someone who's leaning forward on these veteran issues because we've got to continue to evolve. You know, I'm really critical, Nate, and I think you'll appreciate this. We have a lot of people that go, and not all of them are in the military. We've got interpreters of all stripes, from American citizens all the way down to local nationals. And we do a terrible disservice to those people across the board. You know, we have abandoned all of the Iraqi interpreters that we weren't able to. If we're going to have an open border policy, why the heck aren't we bringing these interpreters back over? Right. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around that. We have people who work in contracts. And instead of saying these people are a valuable part of what we do when we go somewhere, we look down upon them. And it's like, hey, these guys are filling a line item that the government said we are short here. We need your help. And so these people go. And they get paid. It's a job. It's a dangerous job. It's a crappy way of life. And so we're compensating them for that. But if they get injured while they're there, if what happens to you happens to them, it's a completely different response. And these people are in combat, just like anybody else. We've got to do a better job. If you're a DOD civilian and you go over, you're sworn in, different response. There's not like a VA service for the DOD. We've got to fix all of these things. And yep, that's expensive. So before Congress or president, before you send someone, understand that you're going to only recently, the last Civil War widow died only recently, right? And so this is someone that received a pension. Granted, it's a small little amount of money, but it went on for 80 plus years, you know, until she finally, however long it was. I mean, she was young. These things, you know, this is part of the calculus on, are we going to go? And what does going mean? And it means people like you, people like Kent and Stacy, people who come back and their life has changed because they went for us. We've got to do a better job of picking those pieces up. I want to move on from that because you do so many other things and we're going to run out of time. Well, let's talk about Africa and the work that you do with the animal and the preservations.
So immensely blessed that just by being a part of Congressman Gaetz' office for 4 years, and I'm no longer working there. I left in November to pursue some other projects that are near and dear. I got an opportunity to meet a lot of people that are connected in the community, and then more broadly. So I met this guy named Kevin Garrod, and he was born in London, and he flew into the United States on 9/11 when he was 17 years old. So 9/11/01, he lands in Atlanta with his mom, and the towers come down, and this guy, really incredible. I mean, no hesitation, goes and enlists in the United States Army. You know, like really incredible. It wasn't his intent, but as soon as he showed up, that's what he did at 17 years old. Um, he he went further after being in the conventional army. He went into special forces, went through selection, and became a Green Beret, and did some really amazing things. After he got out, he kind of spent some time trying to figure out what he was going to do with his life. And having had a passion for conservation, he decides he's going to pick up and move to South Africa. When he goes over there, he realizes that the wildlife rangers that exist, the indigenous, the South African, Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, for all intents and purposes, are woefully undertrained. He recognized how much training he had, the benefit, and the struggles that they're having as a result of their lack of training. So his idea was, well, I got all this training. I'll just train them myself. So he's out there doing, combat casualty care and self-aid buddy care and, small unit tactics and, basic ISR stuff. And trying to find out how can he leverage his experience in the United States military to make them better at saving the wildlife, the big five, the ones that are being targeted by poaching, because the numbers over there are just really difficult to handle when you learn how many rhino we have left, how easy it is to go and poach them, how easy it is to transport those horn out to Southeast Asia, how much money they can get. I mean, you just can't turn down the money. When the average farm worker over there is making $200-$300 US a month, and somebody's going to give them $1,000 US to go shoot a rhino and cut his horn off, I mean, it's a no-brainer,
right?
What they're going to do. So it's a network, it's a syndicate, and you've got to kind of target like it's a crime family almost, in a sense. So Kevin comes back to the States, and we get linked up just by the nature of the people that I know. They heard about his mission. They said, you need to go talk to Nate Nelson. He'll help you get connected.
Right.
And we were discussing what he's trying to do. And he said, I want to bring a lot more U.S. veterans over here, not only to experience the things that I've experienced, the scenery and the conservation mission, be hands-on this mission, but also leverage their skills as well. So you've got way more qualified, medical professionals in the military than he ever was. And, our American dollar can go so much further in South Africa that, it's incumbent upon us to really leverage what capabilities we have. So we're trying to create programs for, we sat around and brainstormed all the different things that we could do. And, I talked to my wife, and my wife said, well, I'm not going to let you go over there by yourself. You're taking me with you. And I said, I know, right? Like, how often do the wives or spouses, I hate to say wives all the time, but spouses sit back in the States and, the service member goes to the other side of the world, does incredible things, comes back, can't talk about most of it. And, they've got all these issues as a result. It's like,
right.
Why not bring them along? They can see their service member in that mission mindset and be able to tap into a little bit better who they are. And maybe we can reach out to the Department of Defense and, create a marriage seminar out of this, or a marriage retreat. Maybe, separately we can do a PTSD, moral injury retreat. Maybe it's a spiritual retreat, where we talk about spiritual resiliency and ways to apply that. But you go over there, and the nature conservation mission is the appeal. The new landscape and country is the appeal. And then once you have them there, at the end of the day, You have dinner, you get a cold beer, you sit around the fire. All right, now, man, we're going to talk about some of the struggles that I had leaving my active duty career and trying to find work on the outside. What issues did I have? What did I do to resolve that?
Yeah.
Or, hey, I'm really struggling with some of the things that I saw or did in Iraq or Syria. And, the mission takes your mind off of it for a second. But how do we, as a veteran community, follow on after the fact? Because we all got to come back home, and we're all going to go back to our own location. How do we maintain that benefit into perpetuity?
And let's spend a minute here because there's a lot of damage, that moral damage lives in a lot of this stuff, and I'll use myself as an example, not to put anything on anybody else, but I'm working at a high end. I'm working with Navy SEALs, Special Forces teams. I'm going out on their patrols, on infantry brigade patrols. I'm working on the tip of the spear, and I'm talking to a lot of people, and I'm working, and you know how this goes, man. I always say, like, when I worked at the 82nd, if you took off after working a 12-hour day, they would look at you like, oh, you're a half day kind of guy. Like you work and 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 you pull as hard as you can on whatever part of the rope that you've got access to. If it's, some guy working in effects, right? And they're trying to coordinate fires and all that kind of stuff. And they're trying to do that. You don't get to get up from your desk. There's something else you can do to help that warfighter on the ground. We're all desperate to do that. And then someone like me, I come back. I've got these tremendous skills. I'm shaping what an entire brigade, battalion, a company, how they see the fight and how they attack it. And I can't even get an interview for a job. And everybody's like, well, you just got to work harder. And I'm like, I've already worked. So I'm programmed to work 20 hours a day, 16 hours a day. I'm going to pour my heart and soul into it. And all of a sudden now, no one's got even the time to talk to me in an interview. Like, well, improve your resume. I don't know how many professional resumes you need before you can't get any, nobody would talk to me, right? And so you talk about this moral injury. I went from being hyper effective, tip of the spear kind of guy who's briefing people and being asked to break down complex thoughts in front of a bunch of other high ranking people, and then to apply for a job and not even get like anything, and it's devastating to not have any ability to contribute anymore. And you're 32 years old, you're 28 years old, you're 45 years old. And it's as if all of your relevance just washed away unless you're in a combat zone. And I know a bunch of my peers, and a lot of people have said this before, but I'd rather be shot at than live through this life. I'd rather be in a combat zone than live through this moment right here, where you're just completely ignored, completely obsolete. And if you do get offered something, it's like, well, you know how to guard stuff. Like, you think I guard stuff? Like, I'm a spy. You can't put me to work finding things out to help you, then let's sit down and talk. Oh, you don't want to talk to me? Oh, now I want to kill myself, and so this is this moral injury, this keeping relevance for veterans. Boy, it is vital to our overall success as a nation in terms of taking care of the people that go and serve.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's difficult being in a position to where you feel like you're critical and you can't leave your post, to feeling like nobody wants me.
Yeah, there's no post for you.
Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah. Fortunately, there's some nonprofits that are trying to tackle that as well. Rob O'Neill, I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but he's got that was a joke, but he's got an organization, used to be called Your Grateful Nation. Now it's called Special Operations Transition Force or Foundation, where he's taken special operations guys and working with companies to apply their skill set and their attitude and problem-solving capabilities towards, and placing. It's a job placement thing, and just convincing them that, they don't have, these traditional, degree skill sets or work experience, but all of this experience they've had their whole life is monumentally better than what you're doing. The problem-solving skills, and to being able to act under pressure and being disciplined about what you do, hugely important.
I want to say this too about Rob O'Neill. And for a long time, I didn't know who he was. And this goes to what we just talked about. My job was to be outside the wire, to know warlords. And so I happened to be home when the Bin Laden raid happened. But, they weren't releasing dudes' names. And so I went back to work and I was doing my job. Yeah. And somebody's like, well, have you seen Rob O'Neill? Have you met him? And I'm like, I don't know who Rob O'Neill is. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, because I wasn't in the world. I was on the side of a mountain. And so honestly, only learned who Rob O'Neill was in the last like 4 years. Before that, I'm too busy to know what you're talking about.
And that happened yesterday. We're leaving search tomorrow. Like, we're done with that. We've already done BDA. We got to look at
his name. Like, I wasn't paying attention to that. You kidding me? What's the organization called? Let's make sure we get that out so folks can.
Absolutely. And hopefully you don't lose me. My battery's dwindling a little bit, but Wild Response is the name of the organization, doing incredible things. My wife and I just got back from South Africa last Friday, and it was spectacular. Trip of a lifetime. Hands-on conservation work. My wife, my daughter went. We were well taken care of, and we got to experience what the people that are at the tip of the spear for conservation, what they do. So hugely beneficial, and then leveraging our network and capabilities and resources to enhance what they do. Kevin's a great guy, but you can't leverage all that skill set living in South Africa and doing the mission. You need the you need the support squadron back here to help out with all that. So that's what role we're really playing right now, is not only integrating the veterans and active duty into going over and experiencing that, but reaching out to other organizations and requesting. We're doing fundraising, requesting financial support, material support. There's a lot of things that, infrared or thermals can go a long way. You put them in the hands when you're going, it's jet black, and you're looking for poachers that are running through the bush. Something like that, you can save a lot of lives and save a lot of animals' lives if you're able to scan quickly and see those signatures and be able to determine, that's man, that's beast, right off the bat.
Yeah. And so they're called wildresponse.org. You can go there to support them, or just hit up Nate. It's not hard to find Nate. He's online. You can find him. If not, you can hit me at peterbreakitdownshow.com. Hey, listen, I know your battery's running low, and I've had you for about an hour. We've covered a lot of ground, and I think we've landed on where we need to be. Is we need to support these organizations that support veterans, but also this is supporting conservation. I'm a big conservation preservation kind of guy. We got to be, regardless of anything political, we've got to be better stewards of our earth, no matter what. Even when we're great at it, we can always be better. And this is something that I definitely support and want to see you guys do well. Any closing thoughts at all, Nate?
Well, I would want to say that we had a fantastic photographer out there with us that videoed our experience and our trip. We kind of did it as a pilot program. Obviously, if a quadriplegic can do it, then anybody can do it. A quadriplegic with a pregnant wife. So there's going to be a video that kind of captures a lot of that that we're going to use for fundraising. If I could get you to post it to the link after the fact, it may take another week or so to get through. That'd be great, and people can check that out as well. But if you've got connections in corporations that want to get into conservation, or even hunting, one of the greatest things, and a lot of people know this, that one of the greatest benefits for conservation and saving wildlife is hunting in Africa.
Yeah.
It brings a tremendous amount of money that the governments turn right over to protect these species and bolster up their own capabilities to stop poaching. That's exactly what it's about. So, things like, I don't know, your gun manufacturers, your optics manufacturers, side by sides, these guys that are big in the hunting world that want to get their name out there, they can throw some material at us, and it'll go a long way. Really incredible. But the dollar is really the most beneficial. Absolutely.
All right, let me roll this thing. Stand by.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here, are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down Show.